Okay, we're recording.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome. This is the Amherst Energy and Climate Action Committee, or ECAC, which was organized to guide the town in meeting its climate mitigation and resilience goals. So those goals and the plan for getting there are adopted from the Climate Action Adaptation and Resilience Plan, or the CARP, which was accepted by the town council in 2021. It takes 2016 as its base year, calls for a 25% reduction in carbon emission by 2025, 50% by 2030, and carbon neutrality by 2050. So this committee has two primary functions. One is to advise the town council and recommend or propose policies or actions that help us meet those climate goals. And the second is to promote a just, equitable, and speedy climate response through outreach and engagement. Okay, so with that, let's get started on our agenda, although first we need a note taker. Do we have a volunteer note taker for today? Let's see.
I'll do it.
Who said that?
Tony.
Tony. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tony will be our note taker. The next thing on the agenda is always reviewing the minutes from last time. So let me go ahead and bring those up. I had a couple of things I was going to suggest. Let me just share this if I can find the, there it is. Share minutes, share. Okay, so can you all see that? Shall I make it a little bigger? I can at
Yes,
least
please make it bigger.
Yes, view, moment, view, width. No, that's not what I wanted. Okay, zoom, let's do it this way. About there, and I can make this a little bigger. How's that? Better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. So this all looked okay to me. I really appreciate having this schedule in there. Thank you. That was Caitlin taking notes. And I think all of this was fine. So we're going to come back to this schedule later. So those of you who weren't there last time, I might ask if you want to fill in one of those afternoon slots in particular. Going down again. There was a lot of information about the festival. Should I keep going? Keep going. I don't hear any screaming. No. So under advisory and support, there were a couple things here I thought maybe they got garbled a little bit, and I thought they could just be taken out, or just some generic statement about we discussed. What did I say? I had something generic here about. Probably the easiest thing to do is remove them. So we talked about the UCS stance on renewable fuels, which was that it's details. It was that they support a severe limit on them because there just isn't enough to go around for these sorts of applications, and it'll have severe food and environmental impacts if they're used in the way that's being proposed. So I think that's probably too much information, and we could just strike those or say something generic like the IPCC was the one that assumed the fuels would only be used for transportation, and everybody seems to have adopted that. I think it's just easiest to strike them. Any objections to just striking?
Can you just tell me which ones, where to strike?
Starting with the Union of Concerned Scientists and ending with the end of that paragraph.
Okay.
We could just say discussion ensued about different environmental impacts.
Got it.
There's another spot where something like that happens here, where I sort of think we should leave this commentary about Joe's conversation with me out. Most of the important stuff is in the letter. And, you know, I heard from Jared that she was assuming, even though she's taking a stance that looks, well, it's a little touchy. So I was thinking maybe we should just take that piece out.
Yeah, no worries.
We can say we discussed a conversation that Lori had with Jared, and I think we say that.
Yeah, I'll make this. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I think you've already got it. You don't need to add any more.
Yeah. So sometimes it's really nice to have the details like that schedule. Other times it's not necessary. Just need to say that we had a discussion. People who are interested can listen to the recording. I think the second thing is fine. This comment here we've talked about before too, I think. Any other comments? I'm curious about this. Town's landfill solar could be added to the website.
Yeah, we'll see. Things are, I'll follow up at another time, but
Yeah.
it's just not my number one priority right now. Sorry.
I get it. All right, so any move to accept the minutes with those changes? Anyone need to see them a little more?
Sure, I'll move.
Thanks, Don. Is there a second? Second.
I second.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, and then in no particular order, Goldner,
Yes.
Lenung,
Yes.
Drucker,
Abstain.
Kissing,
Abstain.
McElrath,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Okay, minutes are approved.
All right. So moving on, the next thing on the agenda is usually public commentary, but I believe we have no attendees, so we can move right on to the Sustainability Festival planning. So with that in mind, going back to those times we had before, we could still use a couple of volunteers for the 12 to 2 and 2 to 4 slot, remembering that the 2 to 4 slot is also cleanup. Laura or Michael, will you be around on April
I'm
26th?
unfortunately going to be out of, well, actually I'll be in Amherst, but I'll be coaching a tournament that weekend. They just
Okay.
planned that weekend for that tournament, so I unfortunately won't be able to attend.
That's okay. Anyone else?
I am coming back on Friday, so I can go to this. So I think I could do the 12 to 2 slot or the 2 to 4. I just need to double check my kids' sports schedule for that afternoon. But I will double check that and get back.
Okay, just let us know. And again, I'll probably be there all day. So if I can disappear a little early, that'd be great. But otherwise, I'm sort of planning on sticking around most of the day. All right, so I think everybody else is already signed up who's here. So do we have any other? Actually, there was something that I could ask about now. So last time we batted around a few ideas about PACE. You know, maybe getting some information out there about PACE, maybe putting a sign up over the top of the booth, over the top of our table, hanging from the tent, asking business, you know, landlords to stop by. And I don't remember if we did the same thing for renters, but I had an interesting conversation with Allegra Clark today, who's on the Affordable Housing Trust or something like that. And she reminded us that, you know, there's a lot of rental units. I think one of the things that we haven't done very well as ECAC is figured out how to outreach to renters and how to get the landlords interested. There's a lot of money right now, you know, Mass Save has money available for everything from PACE to the usual incentives for multifamily units. But the landlord has to be the one doing it, right? It's a lot of money, but the landlord has to do it. So the big question really that I think both of us agreed on by the end of our discussion was, you know, how do we get the landlords involved? how do we get information out about to the renters about the few things they can do themselves, and how do we get the landlords involved? The big one is how do we get the landlords involved? So if there's any ideas for that, how do we, is there a, and we'll talk about this more later, but in particular at the Sustainability Festival,
So we've tried a few things over the years, particularly, and so Steve would be better suited to give the update because he was more involved than I was. So maybe we can talk about it next time. But we were doing a lot to try to add some of this, some energy data and energy efficiency stuff, energy data to the renter agreements, right? And expect inspections. We've talked before about green leases and how do we, because it doesn't always, there's no universal approach, I don't think, to whether the tenant pays for the energy or the landlord does. And so there's questions about cost sharing or, and then the landlords will say, the tenants leave the windows open. The tenants will say it's too cold in the house or too hot. So there's just a lot to overcome there. I don't think it's impossible, but, and so we've talked about trying to have meetings with some of the landlords. I just don't think we've ever been able to move very far on that, but it has been a topic of a lot of discussion over the years and with minimal success in making progress.
so let's come back to the bigger discussion later, because I want to ask you about what a green lease means and stuff like that. But in regards to the Sustainability Festival specifically, since that's the agenda item right now, is there anything we can?
I mean, I don't think it hurts to say, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. Are landlords going to be walking around the Sustainability Festival? Like that seems.
They live in town. Some of them, okay,
likely,
the ones that
but-
live in town. Yeah,
Probably not the right audience, I guess.
it might
Yeah.
not be.
Yeah.
I mean, Mass Save came out with their 20, or is coming out, I'm not sure, with like their 2025 incentive program. I mean, again, like I mean, we can inform landlords, but yeah, that, I mean, it's interesting, like that situation between who pays for the energy, if it, and do you just pass it on to the tenants? Like it's not unique to Amherst. Like we found that issue all across the United States. And it's something like, it's a difficult one to tackle, but yeah, I guess, informing tenants what they're, and maybe they can have it, the tenants that are interested in this topic and like that will be at the Sustainability Festival, maybe they can put pressure back on their landlords. And maybe that's information to provide residents of multifamily dwellings, of kind of larger multifamily complexes, that they can write back or inform their landlords that, hey, this is something you can help with, as we're trying to do the same. It's
What I found
one
last year was
possibility.
the renters who I spoke with last year, if they're at the Sustainability Festival, they may well have already been trying to do that and not getting much of a response.
Right.
I almost feel
That's
like we
fair.
need a big sign that says "For landlords only." Or something. Special incentives for landlords. There is a page now. There is a Mass Save page that's specifically for landlords of 1 to 3 family units, or 1 to 4, and then 5 plus. I think they divided into 2 different pages.
I think you're dealing with two different things, Lori. I mean, I think you're dealing with incentive programs from Mass Save, what we can go in and do to your building. We can put in insulation for free. We can do all these things that the economics of it are not a big deal. They're essentially free. Then there's the PACE stuff, the kind of major retrofitting stuff,
Right.
which isn't free. I mean, there are various advantages to it. It's not a mortgage the way there's a mortgage. Payments are basically done on a real estate tax basis. So
Right.
there are a variety of reasons to do it if you are going to embark upon a major retrofit. And we shouldn't confuse those two things. They're not the same.
Right.
They're really not.
Yeah, no, I realize that, but I think even getting landlords to do an energy audit can be hard.
No, I agree.
Get
I
their free
agree.
stuff.
And understanding why doesn't make any sense, since it's
Yeah.
simply, this is a free service that's being provided.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, whether it's inertia, what it is.
Well, I
Um,
mean, it would be that their tenants pay for heating and electricity. So what
Right.
incentive do they even have to spend time on it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Yeah, I guess I don't know how the payment is structured, if it's just baked into their rental cost for the month, or if they actually forward the utility bill over and they pay exactly what they use, right?
When
'Cause
I
if,
when I rented, you sign up your own account.
Yeah, and I think if you're in an apartment complex, that's pretty common. I think it's different if you're renting a room or even an apartment in a big old house where there's only
That's
one
right.
electric hookup to
Right.
the house.
That's right.
but yeah, you're saying the larger multifamily, you
Yeah,
have your own electrical utility bill,
Uh,
individual to yourself.
and it's illegal to charge, if it's not separately metered,
Right, right.
they can't charge for, landlords
Oh.
can't make you pay electricity.
I didn't realize that.
They can't take the big meter and say, somehow or other, we're gonna split this up, because some people use more electricity, some people will use less electricity. It's gotta be separately metered. It's the only, otherwise it's
Yeah.
fundamentally unfair.
Oh, that's interesting.
But if you rent the whole house, like when I first
Mhm.
moved here, I rented a house,
That's different.
And
There's one
I-
meter.
did my own
Yeah.
electricity bill there as well. But
Right.
then you see some rentals that are like utilities included. So I think it
Right.
varies a bit. And so the green lease thing, there's been attempts, and Michael maybe knows more about this than the rest of us, of like cost share. So like if the landlord put in the capital to make the updates, then they somehow cost share the savings, or they should share the savings in some way. And they do this with like commercial leases as well. But
Mhm.
it's tricky.
All right, so this is a good, if we have time at the end, I want to continue talking about this a little bit, but meanwhile, back to the festival, is there anything that we should or could do that, I mean, other than maybe just putting up a sign, inviting in landlords to talk about mass save incentives, and separately, the PACE program, I mean, two separate things, right?
It doesn't hurt to put aside, like to say that, like maybe we'll get some people that have like auxiliary dwelling units or something who want to talk to us. Like,
Right.
so I don't see there any harm in it. I just don't think we're gonna get.
Yeah.
If they're renting out rooms or even small apartments within their apartment, then within their house, then they would have reason to want to do this. Maybe they've already
Yeah.
done it in that case. But yeah, all right, put up some, I'll think about some signs to hang from the top. All right, onward. Should we go on? Okay, education outreach is next then, PACE. So Don, I wanted to specifically ask, we were talking a long time ago about having some sort of meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. What ever happened to that? Because that's sort of related to, how do you reach people? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
That kind of died a slow death, first because we were waiting on if Stephanie can I think if I'm wrong, we were waiting on Pace, getting their stuff together. And then the chamber and the bid thing all changed, and the person that Stephanie and I talked to was no longer the person at the chamber, and it
What's
just
the
kind of
bid?
fell to the bottom of the barrel someplace.
What's
From
the
my
bid
perspective.
thing?
What?
What's the bid thing?
Well, there's both bid and the chamber. I mean, bid, is a business groups. The idea was to get a combination of the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Improvement District, people who were members of the Business Improvement District.
Okay,
I
business.
mean, various landlords are members of the Business Improvement District.
So I'm gonna suggest that after the Sustainability Festival, we maybe try to fire up that effort again. And because I was looking at the chamber's event calendar this morning, and they don't seem to have regular meetings anymore. They have all sorts of special events that are on their calendar that are either stuff outside the chamber that they just think chamber people are interested in, or some of them are chamber sponsored, like a martini dinner, some sort of a happy hour or something like that. So, maybe we should invite them to a happy hour, maybe we should just do something like that and offer up a little seminar that just please put this on your event calendar and see what happens. Pizza and beer always gets people to come in the door, right? So
Yeah. Well, Stephanie has something she wants to
Sorry,
say. I saw
Stephanie,
her
go
hand
ahead.
up, but we literally were talking along those lines
Yeah,
quite a while ago of trying to, looking
okay,
at the Marriott and putting on something that,
yeah,
but Stephanie had her hand up.
go
So
ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was basically just gonna say exactly what we had gotten to, Don, which was that first we had spoken with people in the PACE program to make sure that we had someone who would speak. We got some dates. Then we reached out to the chamber and we asked them, how could we put on some kind of an event that, we could bring this person from PACE to come speak and address members of the chamber. And at the time it was Claudia who was very interested and really all over it. And she and Dawn and I met and we were going to schedule something at a function room during one of their, and I think it was like a cocktail hour that they have. We were going to do it during one of those events. And then the PACE program was changing their guidelines. And so that just put a stop to everything. And they said, please, we don't want to move forward with this until we have new guidelines. And then Claudia left the chamber. So we didn't have Claudia to work with any longer. And we just haven't revisited the effort. So I think what makes sense in terms of next steps is for Dawn and I to outreach to the chamber again and make a connection about this and then get back in touch with somebody, and it may be somebody different at the PACE program, to see if we can get them to come out, and see if we can re-coordinate that effort.
Yeah. Lori, you're muted.
Sorry. I was saying that I think maybe after the Sustainability Festival, we should come back to this in all seriousness and try to get something on their schedule. I think it's worth talking to folks and doing it even on a regular basis, maybe, because this is the big problem, right? This is the big missing piece in all of this.
I do think it would be really helpful to have someone from the PACE program be available
That would be
for,
great.
at least an initial session. I think we can follow up, but I really think like a first initial session would be really helpful if we had someone from the PACE program there as well.
Okay, so any ideas who in particular, or?
I will just reach out again. And again, I think let's just get through the festival and then Dawn and I can reconvene and do that outreach to folks at PACE again. It's mass development, so we can reach out to them.
Yep. Okay, good, because I'd really like to see that happen sometime, for so many reasons. All right, moving on then, anything else on PACE to discuss?
I've promised Tony language for a banner by Monday, so he'll have it. Okay.
Okay,
And Stephanie, I was going to reach out to you tomorrow to talk to who I should contact at Pace to see what sort of materials they may already have that can be available at the festival.
okay, and so that's the
Just get it
banner for
in.
the festival, something to hang up to, okay.
Good.
All right. So if there's nothing else on that, Tony, coordination with local groups, we've got an event coming up.
I don't currently have any updates for that, other than in the meantime, just look over those cues that had Stephanie send out to all of you.
You sent out cues, but not the date again. You should
Oh, the
put
date is
on
April.
everything. Sorry,
Date is
April 15th.
April. Yeah,
April, what?
I'm gonna look really quickly. It's not April 11th, though it could be April 11th.
Oops, April
It is April 11th.
Okay,
From 1 to
April
4.
11th. Ah, yeah, I have it as Elevate meeting with ECAC from 12 to 4. It's 1 to 4. I'll block out noon to 4, so that's okay.
Great.
Yeah, make
It would
sure
be
you put
1 to 4.
the on everything you send, put the time and the date. Otherwise, it tends to get, I have to find it on my calendar, which
sure.
would be hard.
But yeah,
Um,
otherwise, just
yeah.
looking over and figuring out which topics each of you guys would like to discuss. Again, it's just an information exchange to get some of the Elevate people interested or involved with what is happening locally, and
So we have
hopefully boost our numbers.
Right, and we have one more meeting before that, which is good.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we all have a look at those prompts and just have a little discussion around that at the
I
next.
am meeting with Zoe, who is the coordinator, on Friday to discuss the location. So once I have the location, I will also add that along with the date to the top of any other information I send out.
Okay, good.
Are there any questions about those topics?
Should we bring up the talking points? It was a pretty long document, as I recall. Did it make it into the packet? Didn't make it into the packet, did it?
It didn't make it into the packet, but it doesn't have to. I sent it to all of you.
Yep.
As long as you share your screen, it can always go into the packet later. It doesn't have to be ahead of time.
Okay, and it was from Tony and Stephanie. Where is it? No, that's a different thing. Why don't we just put it on the agenda for next time, as we will discuss those points at the next meeting, and it'll be fresh on our mind for Friday.
Great.
That's probably the best thing to do.
Sounds
All
good.
right. So that's going to be a big discussion at the next meeting. All right. So if there's nothing else on that, I don't have anything more on heat pumps. I've been in Belize most of the big part of the last 2 weeks, so I've not done anything. And the same thing with climate resilient schools. I've got nothing to report there. I did in an outreach thing speak with Lyra Clark, as I mentioned, but I'll do that, I think, as part of ECAC member updates at the end. So talk a little more about that. So anything else under education and outreach that we should touch on? If not, on to advisory and support, UMass climate plan. Nothing much has changed in the last couple of weeks. I am going to be sitting on this subcommittee that was put together, assuming they don't, well, we'll see. At least my name is on it at the moment. So I will have a lot to report, I think. But I got nothing this time. Draft solar bylaw, Steve's not here. Transportation, Tony, anything more there?
No updates on that.
I can say that the pothole situation continues to be horrendous. Go ahead, Laura.
Stephanie, did you want to say something?
Go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, Lori, you just sort of blew past the solar bylaw, and I just wanted to say
Oh.
that there's a meeting this Thursday. The meetings are now on Thursdays, every other Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. It's the CRC meeting, subcommittee meeting. So this Thursday, 4 to 6, and I think it may be one of the only agenda items.
Okay, so this is a good week if we can to go. Will Steve be there? Do you know?
I think it depends on whether or not he has a conflict with a class. He doesn't make it to every meeting, so I think the time change has been a bit problematic.
Okay, I will ask him. Does anybody else want to try to be there? Have time tomorrow? Stephanie, you got more? All right, I made myself a note just to reach out to Steve to see if he's going to be there. I'm not sure I can make it tomorrow, but I'm not sure I can't. So if he can't make it, I will probably at least try.
And I will be there.
Sorry,
And I will be there
you will be there.
as
Great.
staff. Yep.
That's good. Okay. So back to the agenda. Regional estate
Oh,
policy. Oh,
Sorry,
Laura.
wait, I wanted to say something about potholes.
Right.
So I was doing a little bit of research about potholes and found out that they are increasing due to climate change because of the
course.
freezing and thawing cycles. And of course, it's costing towns more money, it's creating more difficulties with budgets, as well as many other infrastructure problems that are just getting more expensive for a host of reasons, but climate change being one of them. So anyway, I was looking, you know, both New York and Vermont have these bills that are trying to tax or put fees on fossil fuel companies to do Superfund types, super funds that will pay for some of the infrastructure needs for climate change. So anyway, I was just looking to see if Massachusetts was going to do something similar. Of course, now Vermont and New York are being sued by 20 other state attorney generals, which why other state attorney generals are messing with the business of other states is beyond me. I mean, I know why, because they say very clearly to protect the energy companies, but anyway, I just wanted to flag this issue that I think we need to get more taxpayers aware of the fact that we are the ones that are paying for climate change.
Yep.
And we should be pushing back against that. And we're the ones, because we're paying for climate change, that have to do things like have fights about schools versus potholes and all that other stuff. Obviously, this is an oversimplification, but it all contributes.
Yeah.
These are all kind of multipliers that create more stresses. So I don't know that there's anything we could do other than maybe write an op-ed about potholes and climate change. And
that'd be cool.
But I just wanted to share my knowledge that I was looking at the other day.
That's interesting. I think that'd make a cool op-ed.
On everybody's minds, and it makes it harder to bike, which is, I mean, it's just a rolling impact, right?
Yep. Yeah, we should point that out. That's a really good, because right now I know there's enormous budget fights going on in town, right? I mean, our neighborhood's up in arms about school funding, and it's just it's huge.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse. Like the more we have to pay for infrastructure improvements, or, you know, and I don't know, Stephanie, if there's resiliency grants we could potentially use for things like potholes, or if we could bring this up at the state level a little bit more, but
I think we should sue Exxon.
yeah, well, we can jump in.
Sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, I was just going to say, so yeah, there certainly was a lot of infrastructure money that was made available, but now it's not going to be available anymore. So I think, you know, and I think we've sort of had some internal discussions, but I think, you know, we're going to be spending a lot more on a lot of things. And I think this is just, I think finding funding to support these things, especially stuff like infrastructure, is going to be so much harder because there's going to be so much competition for it.
Yeah.
So I don't foresee this getting easier or better, or that there's going to magically be resources that will appear.
Yeah.
I think we've had them, and and I think, you know, cities and towns were definitely taking advantage of the IRA funds. Sorry, my dog keeps leaning
Oh,
on the
yeah.
computer. The IRA funds were, you know, were actually addressing that very issue, or at least one of that as an issue, you know, the infrastructure issue. So, um, you know, I'm sorry that I'm not sounding positive, but I don't anticipate it getting easier.
Right. Uh,
Well, you can put me down, Lori, to I can try to draft something up that maybe we
Cool.
can put out there in the world.
it can be short and sweet, I think, just pointing out to people that this is yet another climate impact.
Yeah.
And it might be worth even mentioning what's going, I don't know if it is or not. You know, the understory here is really the lawsuits, and what had been reasonable lawsuits by states are now turning into a free-for-all to sue environmental efforts in general under Trump, which is pretty horrifying because they're going to gum up the courts. You know, they're just going to gum everything up if they weren't already gummed up enough.
You know,
Laura, I'd be happy to help with that
Oh,
too.
great, Tony. Yeah.
Just
Oh.
because I was just having a conversation, and it's also a public health issue, so we can talk about or mention at least that it actually is a public health problem.
Mhm.
Don't know any other further details, but we can collab and I'll get back to you on that.
That sounds good.
I
Awesome.
do also think it's an opportunity to, besides, you know, the impact to roads. I think part of that is also if people drive on roads less. So it's like definitely something that we can promote more alternative transportation. I think that spin on it as well would be important to include.
Yeah. Although bigger, heavier things do more damage to the roads, so that might be.
Yeah, but they're not on those side roads as much. And it's a lot of the side roads, I think, is where you're not getting things fixed, right? It's the main roads are typically the ones that get addressed, and that's where those vehicles typically drive. So
Oh,
I would say it's really like the, you know, some of the smaller roads that just don't even get addressed at all.
they get disintegrated, right? But things like Pelham Road have also been horrific for years now. There's just nothing being done. And that's a major road and a major intersection with Southeast Street or East Street, Northeast Street, whatever. All right, so going on. Where are we? Transportation. Okay, regional and state policy updates. I don't have anything there either. So I think if there's nothing else about advisory and support, that we're on to staff updates.
I actually don't have anything. Just, you know, the reminder that the Sustainability Festival is April 26th from 10 to 4 on the town common. We have I keep getting more information from people that want to participate. And we've got some really interesting stuff and some great demos this year. So really looking forward to that. And other than that, I think we have a kickoff meeting for the technical assistance for a feasibility analysis for EV parking charging infrastructure. So that's happening tomorrow. And other than that, I think, you know, there's nothing beyond the other opportunities and programs that I've spoken about before. Oh, I will say we did have the heat pump information session. We only had about 12 people attend. They asked great questions. It was recorded. It's on the town's website, both on the YouTube channel and also on the sustainability dashboard. There's a banner and you can click on the link about the program and the info session there. But we did have people follow up and contact CET after the event. So there was still, even though there weren't a lot of people in attendance, there was still some good feedback and response to having it after the fact.
So there was a question that came up today that's related to this, which is the heat pump program is primarily for homeowners, but what if a landlord wanted to, someone who had an apartment complex wanted to, or even a house with apartments in it, wanted to participate, is there a place or a renter for that matter? For renters, there's probably not much they can do because it's heat pump installation.
I
But
think, yeah, I think there's opportunity. I think, right now the focus is on homes and excuse me, low income
Mhm.
homes. But I think, if renters approached for the program, I don't think we're gonna be turning people away. It's just gonna be hard, there may not, unless someone can actually address the entire building. So a renter might approach, but they might not be able to do much because they can't do anything about the weatherization of the entire building, because that's part of this program. So I think there is some desire by CET to do this holistically. It's not just about getting heat pumps.
Right, now what about if the owner is Amherst? I'm thinking of affordable housing. I'm thinking of my conversation that I had with Allegra this morning, where she pointed out that something like some percentage of the housing units are empty because they're awaiting repairs. Is that an opportunity to do energy upgrades? Especially on old units,
I
right?
would say yes, but I don't have a direct line on how that gets handled, and that's not my, but I
Who would we
I
talk
can
to?
speak to municipal buildings, but in terms of like housing, I don't deal with that as directly, really. You might want to talk to someone like Nate Malloy or the Amherst Housing Authority. I think
That's
folks
right.
are the people to talk to.
Nate Malloy or Amherst Housing. I'm just thinking it might be worth alerting them to this program. I don't know if
I-
they're
PACE is a great opportunity. I think the
not
heat
PACE.
pump
This is just,
program,
yeah. We're
the
talking
the
about
heat
just,
pump program in and of itself, I don't think is going to be something that we're going to be able to
okay,
address with housing right now, only because of the way the program is structured and what it covers. The goal is to get heat pumps into 30 homes. That's not a large
okay,
number.
all right,
So I don't, we don't have bottomless funding. We had very
yeah,
limited funding. But I would say, there's other opportunities. This isn't the only one.
yeah, right,
Um,
right. They're sort
and
of
I
in
think, weatherization is going to go a long way. Like, again, I think, for housing, I think something like a PACE program is, another opportunity that, landlords and even the town as a landlord could look into.
Yeah, and that's what I guess I'm wondering. I'm wondering if the town is, it's sort of different parts of the town. Are they talking to each other, or is Amherst Housing aware of the incentives that are available for doing upgrades while these apartments are empty? And there's also the question of from Mass Save side, do they have the same problem dealing with apartments that they have with condos, where they want to see all of the units or examples of each type of unit before they'll approve any incentives at all. Seeing one unit, they won't do anything. They have to see, some combination of units. There seem to be a lot of issues there, but I don't know what's possible, but I just was hoping that somebody would look into it. Maybe someone just needs to be, maybe they're already doing it, but it might be worth asking the question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth asking questions. I just think, it's not an area that I've had as much experience with. And my focus is on the municipal buildings,
Right.
and the residential sector, but mainly in the sort of broader sense, not specifically housing. There's other individuals, staff members in town and other, entities and groups and, that actually address it more directly. And I just don't have as much involvement with that, which is, I think, why you and Allegra had this conversation. And I think it's great. I think it's good to have these conversations and to ask these questions. So it's just a matter of, you know, getting folks to respond. Because as far as I know, there may be some efforts underway. I just am not aware. I just don't have the knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, I might write a couple of emails and just inquire. All right, so member updates. Before I talk about my meeting with Allegra, does anyone else have any other updates? Okay, so if not, this won't take very long, but I did want to let you guys know. So I met with Allegra, who's also interested, she's on this Amherst Housing Trust. I'm gonna get the name wrong. But it's sort of, it's designed to help encourage affordable housing in Amherst. And I was surprised that there's already quite a bit of affordable housing, I think, owned by Amherst, or owned, I'm not sure how the ownership works, but it's owned by the town somehow, that is available, but there's not nearly enough. I mean, they have way more demand than they have units, right? I think that's true in every town that I've ever been in. So they're trying to fix that by finding more places to develop. And there are some really interesting things that are already going on. There's East Gables is a new one that just went in by Amherst College Field. It's this new blue building that's there that you might have noticed. I didn't realize that was affordable housing. There's also, let me just bring up this Amherst Housing Trust. Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund is what the name is. And they have already quite a number of things in progress. There's a 457 Main Street I think it was the VFW hall. It's right next to the train tracks, is already being developed or will be developed. It's sort of in progress. The whole project's in progress, into a community and a shelter and a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other facilities, which will be really interesting. There's also developments planned eventually for 31 South East Street and Belchertown Road, near, not too far from Southeast Street. And there's just a lot of stuff being planned, and the stuff that has been built has all been all electric recently anyway. So they're doing it right, they're putting in all electric everything. But her concerns are sort of the same thing we started talking about earlier at the Sustainability Festival. How do you get the existing units and the landlords involved? What can we do? And one question she had, we talked a little bit about the rental bylaw effort and the fact that that sort of ended up with inspections, right? Is just asking a couple of questions during the inspection. But one thing is, how do you even reach these people, right? There's the Chamber of Commerce bid idea, but is there an email list? Is there some way to just reach out directly to landlords in Amherst? Does anybody keep such a thing? And if so, is it public? And presumably there's contact information. The names of people who own things are available online, right? I suppose one could send a flyer to their address, but is anything like that exist, Stephanie? Is there?
Yeah, there's a whole list of Amherst landlords, but and when we were doing that effort a while ago with Steve, and I think you were around for that, Lori, but we were trying to put together a list. We couldn't get the information that we needed and we were looking for. It was limited. We only got so much information.
Right.
And we tried, with, the town experts, a GIS expert. We worked with the Rocky Mountain Institute folks. It wasn't for lack of trying.
So
sometimes you just don't have the data in the format that you wanted, and it was really, we couldn't get it. So
right. I know I'm not talking about the data about the apartments. I'm talking more about just a generic email list of.
Well, I think they're all tied together, right? So I would have to ask. We could probably, but we could probably put together a list of Amherst landlords. I could certainly look into that. That's something that I would have to probably request through the inspections department, or I could request through the inspections department. Would be the fastest way for it to happen. So I can ask.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something. I mean, it struck me as a little weird to just send an email out to landlords. But on the other hand, if there is a list and it's publicly available, that would be an interesting thing to do, or if it's even available through a public records request.
Yeah, I will say that there have been efforts to reach out to landlords over the years, and it's not unique to Amherst that this is difficult.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the success that you typically have are with the landlords who do own some of the smaller buildings, like 2 and 3 family units.
Yeah.
But when you get to the larger complexes, you know, depending on who they're owned and operated by, you know, i- if it's a private landowner and they don't live here, they live in Florida, or they don't even live in the country, which is quite often the case, that makes it a lot harder to get their engagement. It's just never, for all the years that I've been here and done programming and we've tried to outreach to landlords, I've yet to have anything be successful myself personally. It's just
Yeah,
not been
okay.
easy. And the you know, the rental registration, you know, is, you know, an imperative. So landlords have to respond. So I think, you know, there's definitely some data there to reach them, but whether you get them engaged is a whole other thing.
Yeah, there must be a way, if you're asking for the, yeah, well, it's worth asking one more time. If we keep
I
asking.
guess
maybe
what's the
somebody will-
incentive though? You know, I mean, I think, you know, if the information we're trying to get them is even something that sort of demonstrates savings for them in the long run,
Mhm.
you know, I just think, you know, very clear and concise information may do the trick. I don't know, maybe with, you know, some of the funding that's going away, opportunities like this will matter more to some property owners. I don't know. So
And just cluing them into the mass save incentives and the fact that they can get a bunch of stuff for free, that it, you know, I think there's a lot they could be clued into that they, especially if they're absentee landlords, they might not know about, but if it improves their property value and raises their, you know, their margin, then maybe they would be interested.
I think the
Um,
you know, getting Mass Save to come out and do an assessment is one thing, and I don't think
Yeah.
there's a lack of that happening. It's the follow through.
It's the follow, yeah, I agree.
So that's the challenge.
But I think yeah. I think as Don pointed out, it's two separate things, but even making sure they've all done their mass save audits is worthwhile. Yeah, anyway, just a thought. If we had a way of contacting them all, we could put together a occasional email reminding them. Anyway, just a thought. Okay, so I think that brings us to the close, except for meeting agenda items, which we sort of have been through a little bit. We're going to talk about the Elevate joint meeting next time for sure. That can be, I think, near the top of the agenda, and specifically to go over the bullet points. So let's make sure that is in the packet next time. So everybody will get a copy a few days beforehand to remind them to look at it. And then, what was the other thing? There was something else, right?
Right. Are you gonna
Yeah,
do the
Laura.
op-ed?
Yeah, op-ed. And so Laura and Tony, because of the not meeting thing, one of you should take the lead on this and then solicit comments from the other. So,
Yeah, I'm just looking at the calendar now, and actually I'm in DC for work the next meeting, so I won't be here. But what I'll do, Tony, is I will start a draft and share it with you, and then you can take it from there. And then
okay, that sounds reasonable. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Tony. Okay, so that should be on the agenda as well, somewhere near the top, I think. But after the discussion of Elevate meeting. And then I think that brings us to public commentary, but there are, again, no public attendees today. So do we have a move to adjourn? Or do we miss anything?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Andrew. Second,
Second.
All in favor, say bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.